Hello and welcome to Newsworthy Stories with Jacqueline Jimenez. I have a remarkable story to tell you about, and it involves how a business decided to go about collaborating with a nonprofit. We're going to talk to one of the people involved, and you're going to hear what actually came out of it. Incredible, but also we're going to talk about how a story like this one can actually lead to news coverage. You're going to want to hear more.
There's a remarkable story surrounding the way these people are connected. It involves a business, a nonprofit, a monumental mom, and a former student. Victor Biggs and his wife Bridget Jobson of Exclusively Real Estate pouring into the Epic Foundation, donating a check for $20,000 to the nonprofit. The reason?
Well, I think it was the personality of the leader, to be quite frank. And it's not just the work that Epic does, it's quite frankly the heart that the leader has. And we just tapped into, AJ Donaldson's leadership. We want to see lives change, and we are seeing lives change when we see the testimonials coming in from Epic. We really would love to have a long-term relationship with Epic and helping them move their vision forward. More importantly, we want to see as many students as possible achieve their purpose. There's so much talent out there that's underutilized, and we certainly are committed to making sure that we can be a part of helping others reach their destiny and be a better contributor to society.
EPIC stands for Experienced Professionals Impacting Communities, a seed that was first planted by A.J. Donaldson's mother.
First and foremost, this was inspired by my mother. This is a passion project that turned into a life calling and purpose. She was a community leader by way of music education. She provided access to those who couldn't afford it. So a lot of that understanding of entrepreneurship came from my mother. Single family home, Opalaka. Grew up in church, spare the rod, spoil the child, was very prevalent in my home.
While at this junior achievement event, AJ met Trayvon Walters and discovered the two had this in common.
I got familiar with the Epic Foundation is that I was doing a summer program with my friends, getting different certifications and things like that, first aid and so on and so forth. And then on the last day of the graduation, AJ was there. And then, people started talking, get out cards, get to know names and things like that. That's how we got connected eventually, because his mother was my old music teacher. And essentially, he was telling me her health wasn't doing the best, so I went to go visit her in, some of her last moments on this earth. And, my mother was also responsible for her rehabilitation care when she was in the hospital. My father did various work on her house as I was a child and, to this present day. And then, AJ's been taking me on the joyride ever since then, honestly.
A joyride indeed. AJ inviting Trayvon to this golf tournament where he was awarded the prize for the 50-50 raffle. And then by building relationships, gained access to an engineering internship.
This is a brilliant young man who has an extremely bright future, and we want to ensure that nothing knocks him off of that trajectory. That's why Epic comes in to stand in the gap. What does the world look like if we can actually ensure that every child, no matter what their socioeconomic background is supported from cradle to career by way of scholarships, the money, the resources, mentorship, the time in investing and pouring these lives, and the magic of career pathways, which as we're here on camera, we have our photographer that's right behind the camera over here, who is actually one of our students from way back at DCS. Right. A completely different definition of DCS. Savannah Sanchez. Savannah was actually a part of our tutoring program at that school before Epic even existed. Mm-hmm. And it was the dynamics of saying households that may not be able to afford a tutoring rate, we can still provide access. Savannah, what was that experience for you like at that point?
Yeah, so pretty much when I needed help in 9th grade with math, I was struggling. I had always had good grades, but I didn't connect with my teacher. He just taught differently, and I felt stuck, and I knew I couldn't afford tutoring. My family couldn't afford it, and then I'm not even sure how we connected. I'm not gonna lie. I think just word spread that there's this guy who helps people out. And my mom was like, let's give it a shot. And he did a group tutoring. So me and 3 of my friends, we did group tutoring to lower the rate. Yep. And I passed. So thank God. And that experience was really impactful because I knew I didn't have the funds. My family couldn't afford it. So I was like, well, I'm going to fail math. But it just gave me that extra boost so I could pass the class. Right. So it was awesome.
The Epic Foundation is not only about mentorship, but collaboration.
Everybody seems to have a foundation today. You have a foundation, you have a foundation, you have a foundation. But we find that a lot of these foundations are competing over the same resources, which dilutes our missions and keeps us from actually making dents in some of these social issues that we have. Don't get me started right now, because the dynamics of why Epic is here. We're here to be able to bring everybody together, because it's not a cliche saying just to say that we're stronger together. It is true. If we organize and say, what is your niche? What do you do best? Why is it that you're having to be redundant in this space for these specific initiatives? We don't have to be. We come together, we align in the specific areas that we're gifted and we're called to be, and then imagine this massive ecosystem of incredibly heart-centered organizations that are doing the right things for the right reasons. Epic.
Exclusively Real Estate is a great partner for the Epic Foundation because of its unique experience with nonprofits.
Right now, we not only do residential real estate, but we also do corporate real estate with the niche because of Victor's expertise and his background helping in the nonprofit arena. We've evolved to have just a special niche on our commercial side where we just help nonprofits find solutions for their organizations. It's a very special niche because not everybody understands how a nonprofit works and the needs that they have that is separate from regular corporations. You're dealing with a board, you're dealing with approvals that are not necessarily on a regular corporate end, and having that particular niche, knowing how to deal with nonprofits, knowing based on the locations that we find, what the variance is that needs to be with the city and the local governments and the zoning and everything that goes into that. We have that knowledge base that really helps them. And so that's a really large part of our business.
Being able to identify good-hearted souls that believe in your organization, but then also not just coming with our hands out, right, and begging bread in that respect. If we are in a position to also support them so that their businesses grow, what does that look like? How much more would an organization like Exclusively Real Estate, be able to do for the community if we're also helping you? And we have certain access that we want to allot and provide as not just a thank you, but intentionality behind growing business driven by community. That's the point.
So joining me now to talk more about the Epic Foundation is AJ Donaldson. And so AJ, what can you tell us about the Epic Foundation and how can we get involved?
Wow, I appreciate that opportunity. So EPIC is an acronym, just like everything else in education, experienced professionals impacting communities. So if that describes you, then go to our website, epicsouthflorida.org. Reach out to us, connect with us. If you are interested in supporting young people in scholarships, if you have a heart for the community where you want to pay it forward under mentorship, or if you even have career opportunities, our career pathways programs are exactly where you need to be.
Okay, you're going to have to break it down for us. Okay, experienced professionals impacting communities. All right, so
Yes.
I'm a business or an organization. I want to get involved in the Epic Foundation. How and what exactly are you doing? How do you go about it? I mean, because a lot of people want to help kids. Explain to us how you do it.
Wow. How I do it personally started with scholarships. Coming out of University of Miami, not having the mentorship I needed, I know for a fact, though I had all the superlatives, I was recessed. I was riddled in debt. And if I would have had someone that could have stood in a gap and supported me in certain ways financially, where would I be? The dynamics of scholarships and funding is where things started. And I know that kids today don't care what you know until they know you care. So we invest in their lives first before, as the older people start talking to them, the older generation, us, start talking to them, we want to show them that we're love in action. So that's the first step that we've always started with, is scholarships and financial aid.
And what does it help them do? What does a student need to do? What kind of services do you provide?
Wow. So part of the scholarship fund in itself, or the scholarship program, a student can just simply go to our website, click programs, and one of the first options is to apply for a scholarship. And honestly, Jackie, between you and I, this is a part of the differentiation of even discerning if this child really wants the scholarship, because they have to take that first step of actually filling out an application. So for the young people that are listening, we always encourage them to go to that website, take the time to fill out the application and turn it in as soon as possible,
Mm.
because there could be a yes on the other end of that submission. For those adults and business owners who want to get involved, then yes, absolutely. We're a foundation. So, of course, donate, please contribute towards the scholarship fund. But it doesn't stop there. We go from that money, those resources, to your time. And time is an extremely precious resource. So, being able to leverage some of your time towards mentoring these young people in whatever your experience and expertise is, thus the E&P, experienced professionals. So whatever your expertise is, it could be real estate, like the Biggs family, it could be Bitcoin. Whatever your expertise is, I assure you there are young people who want to hear it.
You know, it's can you tell us a little bit more about how, you and Victor and Bridget all came together? I mean, I always, even in the interview when we were talking, interviewing for that story, I kept saying 30 seconds, give me your 30-second version. So, because I know you're such a storyteller, AJ, you've got a gift. I need to talk to you about that. You've got a natural gift to storytell. So, tell us, the crux of how you kind of came together and the importance of that bond that you have right now.
Wow, and that was beautifully stated, and I appreciate it, because the dynamics of this photo that you are displaying even right now that takes me back in history, Bridget and Victor have known me since I was in college.
Really?
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am. That is over 20 years of a relationship, not to age myself, but 20 years plus relationship. And it actually came by way of mentorship. A mutual mentor of ours, Bishop Dwayne Swilly, who is now part of our honorary board, was mentoring me, as well as, I believe, even married Victor and Bridget. So that is where we connected with, under that veil of mentorship, discipleship that he may have even discerned it as. And though they may seem and look the same age as I am, right? They happen to be a generation that I actually saw visibly and acknowledge as the elders that I wanted to become. And so now, 20 odd years later, for us to now, they say everything over 35, we're all the same age. So we now have a kinsmanship. We are now friends and even partners in really impacting the community.
AJ, talk to me about the importance of mentorship
Mentorship is
in business and in life.
100%. Mentorship, to me, should be at the center of everything we do, at the center, because it creates longevity. There are countries that are thriving because the elders pour in to the youth, and there's a connection between the two. And that's what I want to reproduce in our local community, is the young people being able to connect with the elders and the elders being able to connect with the youth. We have found that there is a disconnect. There's a disconnect, and it's causing a lot of the social issues that we're dealing with today. So the mentorship for me, even for a business, you are raising the next generation of your employees. So
Right.
mentorship should be the center of everything we do. We should be looking to pay it forward. And if I may say this, the pain that we've endured, because no perfect people allowed. So the things we've gone through, we create purpose behind that pain by paying it forward to allow the next generation to learn from our triumphs as well as our mistakes.
Um, I know that we talked a little bit about your mother's involvement, and painting that picture for you, and just the way that story came together. And, I didn't know about your mother's involvement until I actually came to interview you. And just seeing this picture, this reminds me of one of the first churches I went to. I was like, is that the same piano? But it's just that whole setting, reminds me. And even that thing on the wall, I don't even know what that is. Or maybe it's like whatever that thing. Every church must have it. But it was such a picture that I recognized. But to see this mentorship
Mm.
that came from your mom. I know it's important to you, but I want to make sure that we understand that connection because she has birthed something in you that continues on. Can you share what she poured into you, what you now pour in to the youth that you work with,
Wow.
if you can.
Yeah, if I can, it's true because even just seeing the picture immediately gets me into my heart and uh, everything. My mom was my everything, and the single family home, a baby's boy or a mother's son, right? I was a mama's boy, right? I 100% was around her skirt, even in this photo at the church that I was raised in. And what you're seeing on that wall is actually the hymns for the week. That's how they would do it. Like, oh, go to page 44,
Is
page.
that what I can remember? I'm
That's
like,
how I
what is
used to
that?
go, right? And that upright piano that she's playing on right there. My mother was a community leader. That's who she was. If we had to give terminology to it, she impacted the community through her music education program. So what you're seeing there is a student choir of young people that she was educating in music. And her being a music educator is where my community outreach technically starts because even at my young age, 13 years old, I found myself tutoring or mentoring some of her younger students in music theory organically, naturally. I knew the answers. I knew how to help them understand how to get to the solutions. And I would just help, I would support. At the age of 16, 17 years old, I remember having to take over my mom's music program because she had a surgery. And she was out for an entire summer. So imagine 2 months at 16, 17 years old, I'm running a business, right? So all of that exposure to community and even entrepreneurship, philanthropy, all that stuff started with Yvonne Donaldson. And it was almost kismet in the sense of saying, I was born and bred to be this for the world, for the community. Even though I ran from it for a long time, there was no choice. This is exactly who I am and who I will be for the rest of my days.
Thank you for sharing that. And I know that pulling up that picture is really hard, and I knew it was going to be hard when you saw it. But here's what I know is that just as these stories pulled across, I didn't know, the full extent of the story. I kind of came in on after the story had happened.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't know that until I saw it on Victor. Victor and I are connected on LinkedIn, and
Wow.
so when I saw it, I was like, "Oh, that is great!" And I was like, "Oh, wow, that's a great story." And so I clicked on it and and liked it or commented on it. And then I saw him at another event where you both were,
Yeah.
and that was at the Icaba Biz Connect. Shout out for, Jerome Hutchinson Jr. But then as we were walking into that event together, and I said, "Oh, I saw," and I talked about, the picture that I saw.
Right.
And I said to him, that was a great event. He's like, "Yeah, I know you told me that we should do more with these types of stories." I'm like, "Yeah, kind of after the fact." But but you know what? We can go back
Yeah.
and do the interviews, and then we can bring in the pictures that you did take, and we can create a story from the pictures you did take.
Absolutely.
And this is one of the things that, I want people to understand is that your story, the story that we shared, that's the type of story news loves.
Yeah.
Okay? News loves to share these kinds of stories. In fact, I know that I mentioned before, maybe to you, but or maybe on one of my comments, I said that my whole book, How to Get Television News Coverage, it's easier than you might think. That whole book was designed around nonprofits, partly because of my involvement with Neighbors for Neighbors, which is
Right.
a nonprofit that was born out of CBS 4 in Miami after Hurricane Andrew. And
Mhm.
I was the field producer, and we would bring together those in need with those who could help. And generally speaking, the people who would help were businesses. And so, one of the I tell people in this book, it's a handbook, it's 40 something you can read in 40 minutes,
Wow.
that listen, when you collaborate with a nonprofit, first of all, the impact is greater,
Yes.
number one. And
Yes.
so, but it also, instead of say exclusively real estate, saying what a great thing they did for the Epic Foundation, it's much better if the Epic Foundation reaches out to the media, okay, and says how important that donation is.
Right.
And so these are the reasons why I say that Stories like this, really, this type of collaboration leads to news coverage, but you have to do it for news. You're going to have to do it as it's happening, more or less, the day it's
Right.
happening, right? And that's the difference. Because for social media, yes, we can do, that's why I tell people, you can still do the news story on social media, which is what we did. So you're still getting that story out, and that's still a possibility. And also, because it's outside of news, which is limited by commercials, we can tell a bigger story, right? So we
Right.
got to tell a longer story and really get into what you're doing. And this is giving us another opportunity, right? To
Yes.
expand on what the Epic Foundation is doing. So there's so many ways that you can share your story and your organization. But for news, one of the number one ways is to take the, because when you do a story, even as a nonprofit or a business, when you just send a story saying how great what we're going to do, it sounds like a commercial. And
Ah,
news is not, they don't want to cover commercials. But when you collaborate,
yes.
that is the number one way for you to lead to a news story. And it's one of the easiest ways. So, and I also do workshops on that. So I just want you to know, I wanted to bring this because when I saw this story, I was like, that is exactly what I've been talking about in my book, because that's why I was just like, this is one of those stories. And we want you to know because getting that word out is important. It creates community loyalty.
Right.
So when they already know that a business was going to donate $20,000 to your nonprofit, not any nonprofit, to your nonprofit, that act automatically gives you credibility. People don't give out $20,000 to people they think are going to blow that money, right?
Right.
They're giving it to a person that they know is going to use that money in a way that is going to impact the community. And that speaks volumes. And that's where you need the help and how to use and how to use the media so that it will create that credibility. Now, talking about collaboration, I want to get back to how you bring nonprofits, the Epic Foundation, your goal of bringing the nonprofits together.
Mm.
What does that vision look like?
Wow. So the collaborative model that we've created is based on what you said in the last interview regarding it. We are stronger together, where you have a lot of dilution, right? Where the funds feel limited because there happens to be almost created and caused competition around funding versus if we're able to actually come together and leverage these funds for the community the way we're setting out to do in our missions. So the model is really bringing everybody together under the umbrella of the Epic Foundation, which as long as you fall within scholarships, mentorship, and career pathways, then you can be a supported entity. What does that mean? What that means is as Epic and EPIC are out there in the community, raising these funds in this capital and bringing more to these for-profit organizations like an exclusive real estate, they are able to contribute, and then we are able to disseminate those funds like that $20,000, for example, amongst our teams of nonprofit organizations, for example. And Jackie, I'm so glad you stated what you stated before, because you will have many more opportunities to showcase collaboration through the Epic Foundation. Because as much as exclusive real estate is contributing to us, we are also contributing to them.
Hmm.
That's what the collaborative model looks like. Yes, do we have operational expenses and things that we have to do internally to do so? Of course. We have to go out there and find some of these kids. We have to take the time to continue to nurture these relationships and communicate with each other, because what's the key of all relationships? Communication, right? We all know that. So the dynamics of what the Epic Foundation is able to cause in the world allows us to redirect funding to these other nonprofit organizations. Because what's the common denominator of most of them? We need more, right?
Mhm.
We need more funding. We need more mentorship. We need more support. So we cause all that supportive entities to come together. We are bringing organization to organizations.
Yeah. And I think that's what really was attractive,
Mm.
about the Epic Foundation is that you were bringing people together because so many times one nonprofit is doing sometimes almost the same thing,
Yes.
and they're really struggling on their own. Same
Right.
thing, and I have to, it's not a nonprofit, but same thing happens with, faith organizations. When you guys come together, you do so much more. And it's really with any, whether you're in industry or business, if
Yes.
you're a small business, if you small businesses come together, you will be able to do so much more. Whatever, and I love the way you said that in the story. You said whatever your gift is, whatever your specialty is,
Right.
because when you bring your specialties together, then it, it's great.
Yes.
You really can do so much more. And so stop being an island, right?
Ooh, no man is an
you
island.
know, stop being an island and let's really help impact the communities that we're
Right.
trying to serve in a greater way because, as I've always said, nonprofits hold this whole country together. Not really the country, but the whole world.
Right. Yes.
It's the same all over the world. Um, I've always, since working with Neighbors for Neighbors, that understanding of the nonprofit impact. I
Yes.
was like, I used to think the government did that stuff.
Ooh,
No,
yes.
it's not the government.
Right.
It is actually the nonprofits. And most people don't know the nonprofits in their community. Um,
Mm.
in that handbook, I call it a 2 mile range. So 2 miles, look 2 miles north, south, east, and west, right?
Right.
Especially if you're a business, and find out all the nonprofits in your area because you might not know what nonprofits are even, or even in your community, and find out what they're doing. And a lot of times people don't recognize, they might drive by. I don't know if you have a building. I'll just take Four Kids, for example, because I drove past them the other day.
Oh wow.
Four
Yes.
Kids,
Yeah.
awesome, awesome, awesome
Amazing.
organization, right? But if you drive by Four Kids every day and you don't know what Four Kids is, you might think it's a children's center or
Right.
a da 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 da.
Right.
So, what do we need? We need a second line
Yeah.
that says, we help foster kids, or we help families connect with foster kids, or we help get volunteers to help families who have already fostered kids,
Right.
because that's what they do.
Right.
But you might not know that. And so you kind of need a second line. I was even thinking that myself. I was like, newsworthy stories. Yeah, newsworthy stories. I know you're going to get newsworthy stories, right?
Right.
But if I had a second line that said news agency, production team, and media strategy provider, that gives you a clearer picture of
Mm.
what newsworthy stories is. And so, even simple things like that, you need to help the people around you see you. And so, these are the things that I really love about nonprofits. They really are holding us together. But
Yes.
the Epic Foundation, you guys have something special. And I really like what you're doing. You're going to be able to generate lots of news stories from what you're doing.
Yes,
Also,
ma'am.
you're definitely going to be a news magnet if you continue doing the kind of things that I believe that you're doing.
Thank you.
Now, you gave me a little hint of something, and I'm almost afraid to ask. So, you said there was something big that you shared. I don't know if you can share any of it. Is it a secret? Do we have to wait and see? Or do
Are
you
we
want to
saying
give us a glimpse
if
of
it's
whatever you were talking
proprietary?
about?
Yeah, is it proprietary somewhat, but not really? It's not, we're
Okay.
not reinventing the wheel, really. I alluded to it when we're talking about supporting entities, supported entities, all these legalese to some extent. It's just corporate structuring. It's similar to almost like the Salvation Army having its stores, right? It has a revenue generating arm, if you will, that allows it to sustain itself. So even it has a low year on contributions and donations, it doesn't matter. They're not going to go out of business,
Ah,
right?
okay.
That's
So,
the fear. That's the fear of a lot of nonprofits. Is like, oh my goodness, we don't raise enough money at this gala. Oh, what are we gonna do? Less
right.
kids. We got to fire people, right? Because
Mm,
they're considered overhead. No, these are people's lives. So we
right.
have to have an innovative way to sustain our back office, our operations, so that what Epic is really looking to do for all its supported and nonprofit organizations is so that you don't have to touch the donations. So imagine if we can say that 100% of your donation reaches the children in programs, because we have another way of funding our CEO, right? And our executive directors and our program directors. There's another way of funding that so that that can be kept pure, because that gives a lot of donors an icky feeling that I'm donating to this cause, to this child, to these children in need, yet there's a portion of this that has to pay that guy or that lady. It doesn't
Mhm.
feel good. And so that's just the modeling we've done. Now, if we're talking about the big to do, we have an upcoming event where I believe you will be able to be there live and actually see some of this high level contribution happen right there and there, right then and there, like organizations like Exclusively Real Estate.
Oh, I'm so excited. Sounds very exciting. I want to make sure that, uh, because I always tell people, yeah, or it's actually in that book, I call it the big question.
Mm,
When people see this story, or even the story that we produced, what do you want people to know about the Epic Foundation the most, or what do you want them to understand
wow.
about the Epic Foundation?
Thank you. Independent to the Epic Foundation being an organization of organizations, what I need people to ask themselves is, what does a future look like if in this collaborative model we are able to ensure, no matter what a child's social economical situation may be, that we as a community can support every single child from cradle all the way to career? What does the world look like then? That's what I want people to know about the Epic Foundation. That's what we're creating here.
I love it. That's perfect. Thank you so much, AJ, for sharing this story. You are going to hear more from the Epic Foundation. It's probably going to have its own channel, but we'll get to that. Don't I'm not laughing.
Let's
So
go.
I just think that it's just I really think that you will have just that many stories
Oh, thank you.
coming out of what you guys are doing. Thank you so much for joining me, and
An absolute honor.
don't be shy. Go to the epicsouthflorida.org website. You're welcome to donate, um, and get involved, and have your kids get involved. If your kids have volunteer hours, get involved here. Start to understand what it is that they're doing. Have them click on. You have kids. My son is going to be a senior this year. You know, I'm thinking, hey, I'm going to go check out the Epic Foundation to see what it is. Uh, there's so many opportunities. Don't miss out because you don't know. Go click on the website, epicsouthflorida.org today. Thank you, AJ.
Thank you.